Before there was you, before there was Adam, before gardens, serpents, or forbidden fruit, there was another world, a world God created, ruled, and in the end destroyed, not punished, not corrected, erased, wiped out, forgotten, a world so completely annihilated that all we have left are hints, shadows, and a darkness so deep that Genesis itself starts in the fallout. And here is the question no pastor, priest, or scholar wants to confront. What if humanity is not God's first attempt, but his second? What if we are not the beginning of the story, but the restart? Because in the opening lines of Genesis, before let there be light, before creation is rebuilt, the Bible shows us a world already in ruins, a world drowned in darkness, a world violently broken, a world that looks like the aftermath of a divine apocalypse. If God destroyed a civilization before us, what makes you so certain he won't do it again? Today, we open the vault on one of the oldest and most disturbing theories in hidden theology. The world before Adam, the civilization God wiped out, and why he started over with us. For more stories like this video and subscribe to our channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I find it incredible that we learn about history together from all around the world. Now, let's go back to the world before the beginning. People read the Bible as if Genesis 1:1 is the opening line of human history. But what if Genesis 1 is not the beginning, but the reboot? Millions of people grew up believing the Bible starts like this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Clean, simple, orderly, almost poetic. But if you look closer, if you strip away tradition, sermons, children's books, and Sunday school, you will notice something deeply unsettling. The Bible never actually says this was the first time God created anything. It only says, this beginning, this is what God did. This beginning, not the beginning. A beginning that starts with darkness, chaos, deep waters, formlessness, emptiness, disorder. This is not how a perfect God begins a creation. This is how a perfect God begins a rebuild. Imagine this. You walk into a room, expecting to see a blank canvas ready for painting. Instead, you find a canvas already torn, paint smeared everywhere, brushes snapped in half, ashes on the floor. You don't ask, who is about to start painting? You ask, what happened here before I arrived? That is Genesis 1-2. The universe is not introduced as a newborn child. It is introduced like a crime scene. Darkness covered the deep. The earth was without form and void. The waters were already there. None of this looks like the first day of creation. It looks like the aftermath of something catastrophic. Something so catastrophic that the Bible begins in silence over the ruins of a previous world. Early Jewish scholars noticed this. Early Christian scholars noticed this. Early Arabic, Syriac, and Near Eastern theologians noticed this. But later religious traditions buried it, ignored it, feared it. Because the implications are nuclear. If Genesis is the reconstruction of a destroyed world, then what world existed before ours? Who lived in it? And why did God wipe it out? This is not a fringe theory. This is not a modern invention. This is not New Age fantasy. This is a theory older than Christianity, older than Judaism, older than the Bible as we know it. It appears in ancient Mesopotamian texts, early Near Eastern writings, pre-Islamic scholarly traditions, and even hidden strains of medieval theology. The idea that before Adam there was another race, before humanity another civilization, before us another world, con. A world that was destroyed so completely that all we see today are the fingerprints of its extinction. Chaos, darkness, water, desolation, and God hovering over the ruins, ready to start again. But here's the disturbing part. If this theory is true, then humanity is not the chosen firstborn of creation. We're not the original plan. We're the replacement. A second attempt, a restart after failure. The species that came after someone else's judgment day. And if that's the truth, then everything we assume about our importance, safety, and permanence collapses instantly. Because if God erased a civilization once, He can erase it again. Genesis is not the story of how everything began. Genesis is the story of how everything began again. And the real nightmare isn't that a world existed before Adam. It's that we might be repeating its final mistake. But what exactly was this world? And what clues did it leave behind inside the Bible itself? To answer that, we have to look at the line everyone reads, but no one understands. Let's go there and see the darkness God refused to explain. People read the Bible with a comforting assumption. Darkness comes first, because nothing has been created yet. Wrong. Dangerously wrong. Darkness in Genesis is not the darkness of nothing. It is the darkness of aftermath. A surgeon doesn't walk into an operating room and find the patient already bleeding on the table unless someone else was there before him. A builder doesn't begin construction on a house and find ruins, broken beams, and crushed foundations unless something stood there before. And God does not open His story like this. Darkness, chaos, deep waters, formless destruction, unless something catastrophic happened before verse 2. Let's slow down, not spiritually, not emotionally, but analytically, like an investigator walking onto the site of a demolition. Clue #, darkness is never God's beginning. In the Bible, darkness is never described as the natural starting point of creation. Darkness is judgment, absence, aftermath, withdrawal, separation, consequences. Darkness appears when something goes wrong, not when something goes right. Example: when Jesus dies, darkness covers the land. When Egypt is judged, darkness falls. When nations rebel, prophets describe them falling into darkness. Darkness in Scripture equals divine anger or divine abandonment. Yet in Genesis 1-2, we find darkness was over the face of the deep. Why? Who angered God? Who was judged? What collapsed before this moment? If this were the first day of creation, why is the canvas already smeared with the signs of judgment? Clue #2. The deep waters are not nothingness. English translations hide the weight of this term. The word "the deep" in Hebrew is tehom. This word is ancient, older than Hebrew, and it does not mean empty ocean. It means the chaotic waters of destruction, primordial judgment, the remains of a drowned world, the aftermath of submersion. In ancient Near Eastern thought, Tehom wasn't the beginning of creation. It was the end of a previous order. Waters were not the starting point. They were the weapon. God does not create the world drowning in water. He creates a world and later uses water to judge it. Think of the flood: corruption, violence, evil, genetic decay, rebellion, and then water sweeps it all away. Genesis 1-2 looks exactly like Genesis 7, but older, deeper, more ancient. What if the flood we know was not the first flood God used? What if Genesis 1 opens with the ruins of a world drowned long before Noah? A world whose destruction was so total that God erased every trace, then began again. Clue #3, without form and void, is a judgment phrase. The phrase tohu vabohu, without form and void, appears only twice in Scripture. First time, Genesis 1-2. Second time, Jeremiah 4:23, describing the total destruction of Israel under God's wrath. Not the beginning, the ending. This phrase literally means wrecked, ruined, desolate, crushed, obliterated. Jeremiah describes a land judged and destroyed by God. and uses the exact same phrase Moses used in Genesis. Coincidence? No. The Bible has only two categories for tohu vabohu. When God destroys a world, when God is about to rebuild one, Genesis 1 is the second category, meaning the first category happened before verse 2. Genesis 1 is not creation out of nothing. It is creation out of ruins, which raises the uncomfortable question: who lived in those ruins? What civilization angered God so deeply that he erased it? And why was their destruction so absolute? Clue #4. God's spirit hovering is not creation, it's a funeral. The Hebrew word for hovering, rachav, appears only one other time, in Deuteronomy 32:11, a bird circling over its fallen young. It's a word of grief, mourning hovering over death, sorrowful protection, searching for survivors, watching over ruins. Imagine this scene. Properly, God is not floating over a blank ocean. He is hovering over a destroyed world, a world that drowned, a world that collapsed, a world whose final moment was swallowed by the deep. Before God speaks light, he stands in silence over a grave. The grave of a civilization we were never supposed to know existed. Clue #5. Let there be light isn't creation, it's restoration. If this were the first act of creation, God would create light and darkness together. But in Genesis, he introduces light, as if darkness was never meant to be there in the first place. This is key. God is not building. God is repairing. He is pulling order out of chaos, meaning chaos existed before his command. Something caused the darkness, something caused the deep waters, something caused the formless ruin. Something happened before the beginning as we know it, something the Bible refuses to narrate directly. A civilization came before us, a civilization died, and we're standing on the ashes of their world. The silence of Genesis is not innocent. It's ominous. People assume the Bible is silent about this because nothing happened. Wrong. The Bible is silent because something terrifying happened. Something so catastrophic that Scripture begins its story after the destruction, not before it. Genesis doesn't hide the beginning out of ignorance. Genesis hides the beginning out of judgment. What died before we were created? What civilization drowned in the deep? What beings rebelled so catastrophically that God obliterated their world? The silence is not protection. The silence is a warning. The real question, not did something exist before Adam? Too small, too shallow, too safe. The real question is, what made God so furious that he destroyed the entire world before ours? Whatever happened before Genesis was violent enough, corrupt enough, and horrific enough that God erased the entire record and started again from scratch. We are not the first world. We are the next world. But to understand why God restarted creation, we need to uncover the only remaining fingerprints of that lost civilization. They are not written in detail, but they are present in patterns, in shadows, in ancient echoes. The Bible left enough clues to reconstruct what came before us. And once you see it, you'll never see your existence the same way again, because what lived before us did not just die, it was erased. Now let's uncover what or who came before humanity. Humanity walks around with the arrogance of being the first, the chosen, the only, the beginning of the story. But the Bible never actually says that. It tells us Adam was the first man, not the first being, not the first creation, not the first creature to walk the earth, and certainly not the first civilization. The truth is far more disturbing. The Bible hints at something before us, a world, a race, a society that existed long before Adam opened his eyes. A world erased so thoroughly that only the shadows remain. But shadows always reveal their source if you know where to look. Today, we look. Clue has shown. The Bible uses replenish, not fill. When God blesses Adam and Eve in Genesis 1:28, most translations say, "Fill the earth." But in the original English translations, in the versions that shaped the Western world, the word was not fill. It was replenish. Replenish the earth. You only replenish something if it was full before. You do not replenish a glass that has never been filled. You do not replenish a land that has never been inhabited. You do not replenish a world that is brand new. God is telling Adam to repopulate something that was empty again. Why again? Because the world was filled before. Filled with who? It wasn't animals. Animals were freshly created. It wasn't angels. Angels are not earthly beings. This implies the existence, another population, another race, another world that once lived here before humans. But they're gone now. And God said nothing about them, because their memory was not meant for us. Clue #2. Cain's fear. Whoever finds me will kill me. Cain kills his brother Abel. He becomes the first murderer. He is banished. And then he says a line that pastors and Sunday school teachers have been desperately trying to explain for thousands of years. Whoever finds me will kill me. Genesis 4:14. Whoever. Who is whoever? There are no other humans except Adam and Eve at this point, according to the traditional reading. So what exactly was Cain afraid of? His parents killing him. They weren't murderers. Future siblings? They didn't exist yet. So who were these whoever beings wandering the earth? This verse is not a mistake. It's a crack in the wall, a leak in the sealed room of ancient history. Cain knew he wasn't alone. Cain knew the earth wasn't empty. Cain knew others were out there. Other beings, other descendants, other survivors, or remnants of whatever came before. This is not speculation. Cain builds a city, Genesis 4:17. A city is not built for 3 people. A city requires a population, labor structure, society, civilization. Cain did not invent civilization. He joined one, built upon one, or revived one that already existed. The Bible doesn't describe it because it wasn't part of our story. It belonged to the world before. Clue #3. The Nephilim, not angels, not humans. Genesis 6 describes the Nephilim, a race of giants that existed both before and after the flood. Here's the problem. If the world began with Adam, and humanity was wiped out except Noah's family, how did the Nephilim survive before and after the flood? The text implies they were not fully human. They were not divine beings. They were something else, something ancient, something that predates us, something that God allowed to persist as a warning. The Nephilim are not fallen angels. The Bible never says that. They are the children of sons of God and daughters of men, yes, but they appear in a context that hints at genetic contamination from something older, something not created during Adam's timeline, a remnant from the previous world, a species so dangerous that God nearly wiped out the entire planet to stop their spread. But even after the flood, the Bible says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. Also afterward? How? Unless the Nephilim were connected not to Adam, but to whatever existed before Adam, a surviving fragment of the erased civilization, a gene that refused to die. Clue #4. The earth was divided into what? Genesis 10 mentions something strange. In the days of Peleg, the earth was divided. This isn't talking about modern continental drift. This isn't talking about borders. This is something else. Ancient Jewish commentators said this referred to a division between humans and pre-human beings still on the earth. A segregation, a separation, a boundary, a line between 2 races, one new, one ancient. The Bible hints at a conflict between humanity and the remnants of a world that refused to disappear peacefully. Clue #5. The book of Job, a world before ours. In Job 38, God says something chilling. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? The morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. This was before Adam, before humans, before Eden, and the sons of God existed then. Not angels. Job distinguishes angels separately. Not humans. Adam was not created yet. Who are the sons of God rejoicing at earth's construction? A race older than Adam, a race that witnessed the creation of the earth, because they lived somewhere else before being connected to it. Ancient theologians believed these sons of God were the intelligent beings of the world before Adam, a race that first praised God, then rebelled, then fell, then died, and then vanished. Job is God taunting humanity. You think you're special? Where were you when I created the world? You weren't there, but others were. Others. Clue #6. The missing millennium. The gap that shouldn't exist between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. There is a mysterious gap, an unspoken time, a blank space of unknown duration. Some theologians believed it lasted thousands of years. Some believed millions. Some believed it was the era of the previous civilization, between God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth was without form and void. Something happened, something massive, something world-ending, something God chose not to narrate, but also chose not to hide completely. A civilization existed, a civilization fell, a civilization died, and God covered it with the waters of chaos. Then he began again. Light over darkness, order out of ruins, humanity from the ashes of their world. The uncomfortable conclusion. We aren't the first. We were never the first. Humanity was not born on a blank canvas. We were born on a battlefield someone else lost. The Bible does not hide this world. It buries it under hints, shadows, whispers, things that shouldn't be there if we were truly alone. Cain's fear, Nephilim's survival, cities before civilization, beings before humans, darkness before light, desolation before creation. These are not inconsistencies. These are evidence of a race erased by God, evidence of a civilization destroyed so completely that the Bible only allows us to see what is necessary to understand the next part. Why God wiped them out? Because understanding the sin of the first world reveals the danger of the second. Our danger, humanity's danger, the mistake they made, the mistake that triggered God's fury, is a mistake we are repeating right now. To understand how close we are to sharing their fate, we must uncover why God destroyed them. Something existed before us, a race, a civilization, a world. But it didn't disappear naturally. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a cosmic glitch. God destroyed it. And here is the part people cannot handle. God does not destroy lightly. He does not erase casually. He does not wipe out civilizations unless something has gone horrifyingly wrong. If a world existed before Adam, then its ending was not quiet. It was catastrophic. A divine execution, a cosmic death sentence, a judgment so total that God did not leave graves, ruins, bones, or fossils. He left only darkness, water, chaos, silence. Why? What crime can make the creator of the universe erase his own creation so thoroughly that the next race never even learns their name? To answer that, we must examine the only pattern the Bible gives us. God destroys civilizations when they reach three conditions. 1. Unrestrained corruption. 2. Violence without boundary. 3. A complete rejection of God's order. When these three converge, God does not reform. He does not negotiate. He does not rehabilitate. He erases. He did it in Noah's day. He did it in Sodom. He did it in Babel. He threatens it repeatedly against Israel, Nineveh, Egypt, Assyria, Judah. But in all those cases, he still left a remnant. He spared something. But the world before Adam, he spared nothing. Not a trace, not a memory, not a remnant. This was not punishment. This was erasure, which means the first civilization crossed a threshold no later world has crossed. Yet, let's break down the only clues we have for what made God so furious that he drowned their existence in the deep. 1. Corruption that spread into the structure of creation. When the Bible describes corruption, it never describes it as sin in the modern, soft, emotional sense. Biblical corruption is genetic, societal, and structural. It means creation twisting against its design, beings modifying themselves or others, moral laws collapsing, chaos replacing order, identity becoming unrecognizable, boundaries between kinds. Dissolving this corruption is described in Genesis 6 as the primary reason God destroyed humanity in Noah's day. All flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. Not humans sinned, not people misbehaved. Flesh had corrupted. The physical order itself was mutating. In the ancient world, this was the ultimate blasphemy, creation trying to rewrite itself in defiance of the Creator. If corruption reached that level in Noah's day, how much worse must it have been in the world before Adam for God to erase the entire planet rather than reset its inhabitants? Imagine a civilization not only disobeying God, but rewriting creation itself, re-engineering what God had made, crossing boundaries God had set, becoming something unrecognizable to the laws of heaven. Creation rebelling against its creator at the biological level. That is corruption of the first world, and it angered God enough to end their story permanently. 2. Violence without limit. A world at war with itself. Violence is the second condition of divine erasure, not ordinary violence, total violence. Violence so widespread, so normalized, so systemic that peace becomes unnatural. In Noah's world, the Bible says, the earth was filled with violence, but Noah's world was still spared a remnant. Contrast that with Genesis 1-2. The world before Adam isn't described as filled with violence. There is no description of its people at all. Only darkness, destruction, waters, chaos. The silence is louder than any verse. God did not simply punish their violence. He removed their memory, meaning their violence crossed a cosmic line. A world that makes violence its identity does not get judgment, it gets extinction. The world before us carved itself in violence. It drowned in its own brutality, and the Creator ended it. 3. The rejection of God, the final trigger. If corruption destroys the structure and violence destroys the society, then rejection of God destroys the soul. This is always the final straw. When a world decides, we do not need God, we do not want God, we will define reality ourselves, that is when God steps back. And when God steps back, creation collapses into itself. The ancient world before Adam must have embraced this rebellion on a scale humanity has not yet approached. They rejected God not as a deity but as a concept, a law, a presence, a foundation. They rejected him utterly, and God erased them utterly. The most terrifying possibility. What if the beings of the first world did more than sin? What if they modified creation, defied their design, tampered with identity, destroyed moral boundaries, embraced violence, dethroned God from their worldview, became something no longer redeemable? What if they became unrecoverable? What if their existence itself became a threat to the stability of creation? A species so corrupted that God himself could not rehabilitate them. A civilization so violent that mercy became impossible. A world so arrogant that their rebellion shook the fabric of heaven. This was not a world that needed punishment. This was a world that needed deletion. And that is exactly what God did. The weapon God used: water. When God judges individuals, he uses fire. But when God judges worlds, he uses water. Water buries. Water erases. Water wipes all memory. This is why Genesis 1-2 shows a drowned world, a submerged earth, a planet covered in judgment. The earth was not created underwater. It became covered in water after the destruction of the first civilization. That's why the Spirit hovered over a grave, hovered over a world buried in its own punishment. And then God said, "Let there be light," not the beginning, the reboot, the nightmare parallel. Everything the first civilization did, we are now repeating: tampering with creation, rewriting biology, breaking moral boundaries, worshiping self-denying God, normalizing violence, elevating arrogance, collapsing family, embracing chaos, blurring the lines between male, female, human, machine, natural, synthetic. Tell me, does this sound familiar? Humanity is walking the exact same path as the world that came before us. The destroyed world, the erased world, the forgotten world. And if God erased a world once, what makes us think he won't erase ours? This isn't paranoia. This is pattern. God does not destroy blindly. He destroys when creation becomes unrecognizable. We are not heading toward a future. We are heading toward a mirror. When we reach the same condition as the first civilization, God will make the same decision. Only this time, there may not be a restart. There may not be a version 3. This time, the experiment might end for good, because the Bible does not say how many worlds God is willing to destroy before he decides he's done. To understand where we stand today, we need to understand what changed in God's design when he restarted creation. Why did he not give the new world the same freedom as the first one? Why create a new humanity with new boundaries, new laws, new forms of accountability? The answer tells us whether we are his second chance or his last. When God erased the world before Adam, he could have stopped there, walk away, seal creation, end the experiment forever. But he didn't. He started again. Why? Why would a perfect God rebuild after total failure? Why remake a world that just betrayed him? Why create a new race after wiping out the old? To understand this, you must grasp one truth. God didn't restart creation because the first race failed. God restarted creation because he wanted to make something fundamentally different. Humanity is not a copy-paste of the first world. Humanity is a correction, a recalibration, a redesigned version. Humanity is version 2, programmed with traits the first race never had, limited in ways the first race never were, and bound by boundaries the first race never needed until they broke them. We were engineered with safeguards, with constraints, with warnings embedded in our very existence. And these design changes reveal what went wrong the first time. Let's break this down ruthlessly. Asterisk 1. The first world had power without limitation. Humanity was created with limits. Asterisk. The first race, whatever they were, had too much freedom. Freedom without boundaries becomes corruption. Power without accountability becomes rebellion. They were ancient, powerful, intelligent, beyond human comprehension, spiritually aware, physically durable, unrestricted, unregulated. They could cross lines humans cannot cross. They could reach heights humans cannot reach. They could commit sins humans cannot commit. Humans were created with boundaries. We age, we break, we die, we tire, we forget, we fear, we depend, we need. To the first world, dependence was weakness. To God, dependence is protection. Humans were created to need God. The first world didn't. That was their downfall. Asterisk 2. The first world had knowledge without obedience. Humanity was given obedience before knowledge. Asterisk, asterisk. This is why God forbade the tree. People misunderstand the tree of knowledge. They think it was about morality, or wisdom, or free will. It was none of these. It was about timing and trust. God created humans with innocence, curiosity, potential boundaries, moral limits. Knowledge was withheld, not because humans couldn't handle it, but because the previous race had knowledge without restraint, and it destroyed them. The tree wasn't about good and evil. It was about remembering the one command: do not cross this line. The previous world crossed lines God never intended any being to cross. So God created a new race, with a visible boundary built into its mythology, a warning label on existence, and humanity broke it almost instantly, which tells us something terrifying. Humans weren't created to pass the test. Humans were created to reveal the truth about themselves. Asterisk, asterisk 3. The first world had immortality. Humanity was created with death as a safety switch. Asterisk, asterisk. Immortal rebellion is unstoppable. An eternal sinner stays a sinner forever. A corrupted immortal race cannot be rehabilitated. So God built expiration into us, a fail-safe, a kill switch. If humanity ever becomes irredeemable, God does not need to flood the earth again. He can simply let time do his work. Death is not punishment. Death is containment. The first world had no such containment. Their corruption spread infinitely. Humanity's corruption has a timer. We are not dangerous forever. We expire. This makes us manageable, controllable, safer. The first world was neither. Asterisk, asterisk 4. The first world had spiritual access. Humanity was made spiritually blind. Asterisk, asterisk. The beings before us operated with open perception. They saw the spiritual realm interacted with divine beings, accessed knowledge we cannot understood, cosmic laws, witnessed creation, walked between dimensions, moved between planes of existence. Spiritual clarity without obedience breeds arrogance. So what did God do to humanity? He shut the door. Humans are born spiritually blind. We cannot see the unseen unless God reveals it. We cannot access dimensions unless permitted. We cannot reach realms we are not allowed to enter. We exist in a controlled system designed to prevent the rebellion that wiped out the first world. We are fenced in, permissions set, boundaries hard-coded, access revoked. The first world had keys to every room. Humans were put in a single room with the door closed. Why? Because eyes that see too much become mouths that question too much. And the first world questioned God until they replaced him. Humanity cannot replace a God it cannot see. Asterisk, asterisk 5. The first world had unity of potential. Humanity was built with fragmentation. Asterisk, asterisk. Humans are divided by languages, nations, races, tribes, continents, belief systems, cultures. This division is not an accident. It is a feature. Unity gives power. Power without character becomes corruption. The first world was unified, and their unity made them unstoppable even in rebellion. So humanity was fragmented. This is why Babel was torn apart. This is why God confused the languages. This is why nations were scattered, not as punishment, as protection. God would rather have a fractured humanity than a united rebellion, because a united human race would eventually become exactly what the first civilization became, a species with the power to challenge heaven. Asterisk, asterisk. 6. The first world had permission. Humanity was put on probation. Asterisk, asterisk. This is the hardest truth. Humanity was created not with full license, but under probationary existence. Everything we do is monitored. Everything we become is judged. Everything we build is limited. Every empire eventually collapses. Every civilization eventually dies. Every attempt at godhood fails. This planet is not a playground. It is a test site, a controlled environment, a sandbox God uses to see whether humanity too will follow the same path as the erased world before us. So far, we're failing. 7. Why God began again. A divine microscope. This is the answer people hate the most. God rebuilt creation to prove something not to us, but to heaven. The angels saw the first world fall. They saw the consequences. They saw the cost. When God began again, he wasn't starting over out of hope. He was starting over to make a point. Even a weaker, limited, mortal, broken race can still choose righteousness if it wants to. Humanity exists as a cosmic demonstration, a lesson to the universe, a witness against the first world, a counter-argument to the rebellion that preceded us. But here's the twist. We were given lower power, so our choices would matter more. A weak race obeying God is more powerful than a strong race rebelling. A fragile race choosing faith is a greater testimony than an immortal race choosing arrogance. This is the divine experiment. We are not God's first attempt. We are his proof. But proof can fail. And when proof fails, God closes the case. The terrifying question. If God rebuilt creation after the first world fell, he did it because he believed the next race could succeed where the first failed. But now, look at humanity. Look at our world. Look at our technology, our violence, our arrogance, our self-worship, our moral decay, our rewriting of creation, our rejection of God, our corruption of flesh, our spiritual blindness turned into pride, our unity once again forming, our boundaries dissolving, our self-identity imploding. We are becoming what the first world became, which leads to the question that should terrify every human. What happens if humanity, too, fails the same test as the destroyed world before us? To answer that, we need to look at our present world through the lens of the world before Adam, because all signs show the pattern is repeating. If there was a world before us, a civilization erased by God, then the most important question is not, what were they, but why were they destroyed? We have already uncovered the reasons: corruption, violence, arrogance, rebellion, self-worship. But here is the part no one wants to face. We are becoming exactly what they were. Not similar, not close, not approaching. We are repeating their mistakes with terrifying precision. Humanity, too, is on the exact same trajectory as the erased civilization before Adam. And what happens when history repeats? It ends the same way. Let's examine the evidence. *****. 1. The first world rewrapped creation, and so are we. *****. The world before Adam crossed a line God never intended any being to cross. They tampered with creation itself. They altered identity, modified nature, blurred the boundary between kinds, violated the laws embedded into life. What does humanity do? We rewrite DNA. We clone. We modify embryos. We engineer species. We manipulate genders. We build artificial life. We fuse humans with machines. We alter the code of creation. We're not eating forbidden fruit. We're editing the tree. God destroyed the first world when creation became corrupted. We are corrupting creation faster and with more sophistication than they ever did. We are version 2, committing version 1's final mistake on a global scale. ***2. The first world glorified violence. We turn violence into entertainment. ****. When violence becomes a society's identity, its days are numbered. The ancient world drowned itself in brutality. Humanity today? We broadcast murder. We live stream war. We turn suffering into spectacle. We find entertainment in cruelty. We worship darkness in music, film, and games. We celebrate brutality as strength. We normalize chaos as freedom. The first world made violence a cultural virtue. So have we. In fact, we've industrialized it. When a world cannot exist without violence, God removes the world. That is the pattern. Asterisk, asterisk 3. The first world celebrated arrogance. We call arrogance self-empowerment. Asterisk, asterisk. The most dangerous sin of the first civilization wasn't corruption or violence, it was arrogance. They believed they didn't need God. They believed they could create themselves, define themselves, rule themselves. They believed they were the center of existence. What is the modern ideology of humanity? I am my own truth. I define my own identity. I create my own purpose. I don't need God. I don't answer to anyone. I am enough. This isn't empowerment. This is the first world's rebellion, wearing new clothes. When self becomes God, the true God steps back. And when he steps back, the world collapses. Asterisk, asterisk 4. The first world rejected the Creator. We replace God with science, celebrity, and self. Asterisk, asterisk. The ancient world turned away from God and toward their own inventions. Modern humanity proudly declares, God is outdated. Religion is mythology. Morality is relative. Truth is subjective. Humanity is evolving beyond God. We replace the Creator with science, governments, ideologies, influencers, celebrities, technology, money, self-worship. We don't rebel by creating idols of gold. We rebel by becoming our own idols. The first world fell when they dethroned God. We dethrone him daily, proudly, publicly. Shink with the first world united against God. Our world is unifying again. Asterisk, asterisk. Remember, God destroyed Babel not because of what they built, but tided free God, because of what unity would lead to. A humanity without God is a humanity capable of anything. The first world was unified. That unity made their rebellion unstoppable. Humanity today is reconnecting in ways no other era could. Global communication, global alliances, global platforms, global technology, global ideologies, global identities, global influence. The world is becoming one again. One voice, one culture, one algorithm, one collective consciousness. And unified humanity is dangerous, because unity magnifies rebellion. The first world became one, and God erased them. Babel became one, and God scattered them. Humanity today is becoming one with no fear of God, no boundaries, no restraints. The last time this happened, the world ended. Asterisk, asterisk 6. The first world corrupted flesh. Our generation corrupts flesh on purpose. Asterisk, asterisk. Flesh was corrupted in ancient times does not mean sin. It means biological corruption. Bodies altered. Design violated. Nature rewritten. What does humanity do today? We replace organs, insert chips, merge with machines, build artificial wombs, clone bodies, edit genes, create synthetic DNA, engineer hybrids, eliminate natural reproduction, recreate the building blocks of life. We are doing to creation what the inventor, first world did before God erased them. We are creating a humanity God did not create, a future God did not authorize. When flesh becomes corrupted beyond redemption, the world becomes uninhabitable, for them and for us. Two varies. Asterisk, asterisk 7. The first world became unredeemable. We are approaching the same point. Asterisk, asterisk. Here is the brutal truth. There comes a point when a species crosses a line that even God's mercy cannot reverse. A point where identity collapses, morality collapses, Truth collapses. Creation collapses. Conscience collapses. Purpose collapses. The first world crossed that line. Humanity is walking toward it with open eyes. We don't fear the line. We celebrate crossing it. We laugh at boundaries. We mock morality. We call rebellion progress. We normalize insanity. We glorify darkness. We rewrite truth. We create new realities where God has no authority and humans are their own gods. This is exactly the trajectory of the erased civilization. And once corruption becomes irreversible, God does the same thing he did before Adam: erase, reset, start over, or decide to end the experiment entirely. The final parallel, the silence before judgment, Genesis 1-2, opens in darkness, but behind that darkness was a silence, the silence of a world already dead. Today's world has a similar silence. People feel it. We don't talk about it, but we feel it. Something is wrong. Something is collapsing. Something is ending. Something is unraveling. Morality disintegrating nations, fracturing technology, accelerating identity, dissolving. The silence before a storm, the quiet before judgment. Humanity is repeating the first world's path faster and with less restraint. And the same God who erased the first world has not changed, which leads to the most terrifying question. What happens if a species designed with limits manages to break those limits anyway? Because we are approaching that point, a point where salvation becomes irrelevant, because humanity will no longer be human. And at that point, God does what he always does. He ends the story, which raises the final question of this entire documentary. If we are not the first world God erased, what makes you think we will be the last? To answer that, we need to confront the truth about our existence. We are not alone in this story. We were not the beginning, and we may not be the final chapter. If humanity is not the first world God created, and we are repeating the mistakes of the world he erased, then we must confront the most uncomfortable truth imaginable. We may not be the last world either. Humanity has always walked with a secret assumption. We matter the most. We are the center of the story. We are the final chapter. But what if we aren't? What if we're not the climax of creation, but just one chapter of a much longer, darker, older book that none of us were allowed to read? What if we're living in someone else's graveyard, someone else's ruin, someone else's cycle? What if creation has a pattern and we're just following it without knowing how close we are to our own ending? Let's break it down with ruthless logic. Asterisk, asterisk 1. If God has erased a world before, then erasing ours is never off the table. Asterisk, asterisk. People like to comfort themselves with the idea that God promised he won't destroy the earth again. But that promise was made to Noah's world after the flood, not to the world that came before Noah, and certainly not to the world before Adam. God didn't promise the first world anything. He erased them without hesitation. No covenant, no warning, no mercy. He won't destroy the world with a flood again, but nothing prevents him from destroying it with fire, ice, famine, disease, cosmic collapse, supernatural intervention, humanity's own inventions, or simply letting us destroy ourselves. The first world teaches us this: God is patient, but he is not infinitely tolerant. There is a line. Humanity before Adam crossed it. Humanity after Adam crossed it once in Noah's day. And today, we're sprinting past it with a level of arrogance the ancient world never imagined. The question is not whether God can erase worlds. He already did. The question is, what will make him do it again? Asterisk, asterisk, 2. If humanity is version 2, then there may be a version 3. Asterisk, asterisk. If God wiped out the first civilization and rebuilt the world with a redesigned species, then logically, he can do it again. Why would God stop at humanity if the point of creation is obedience, righteousness, and cosmic order? If humanity fails that purpose, God can end us, erase us, bury us, start again, build a new race with new limits and new laws. Humanity's arrogance assumes we are irreplaceable, but creation history suggests we are highly replaceable. Adam replaced someone else, and one day, someone could replace Adam's descendants. You are not as important as your ego wants to believe. The Bible never said God stopped creating, never said he stopped experimenting, never said he was done with new worlds, new races, new creations. That silence is terrifying, because it implies our existence is conditional. God created once, destroyed once, created again. We are living in the middle of a cycle, and cycles don't end until the goal is achieved, which means there may be a species after us designed to succeed where we failed. Asterisk asterisk 3. If God erased the first world completely, why did he leave hints of their existence? Asterisk asterisk. If God wanted humanity ignorant, he would hide everything. There wouldn't be the darkness, the deep, Cain's fear, mysterious civilizations, giants before the flood, giants after the flood, sons of God, existing before creation, beings shouting for joy at Earth's foundations, references to a world without form, context gaps, narrative holes. Yet, the Bible includes all of these. Why? Because the existence of the world before Adam is part of the warning to humanity too. The warning is simple. This is what happens to a civilization when it crosses the line. God left just enough evidence to terrify the wise and humble the arrogant, but not enough to answer everything. Because the unknown makes us cautious, and caution slows destruction. But humanity has lost caution. We no longer fear the unknown. We challenge it, we mock it, we play with it, we break it, we corrupt it. And that is exactly what the first world did before their extinction. Asterisk, asterisk 4. If the first world's sin was arrogance, then humanity's greatest danger is pride. Asterisk, asterisk. Every destroyed civilization in Scripture fell for one reason. They believed they could replace God. The world before Adam believed it. Noah's generation believed it. Babel believed it. Sodom believed it. Egypt believed it. Babylon believed it. Rome believed it. Every one of them collapsed. Every empire humanity has built eventually falls the moment it begins to worship itself. Today, humanity worships technology, identity, freedom, personality, ideologies, desires, celebrities, governments, science, ourselves. Modern humanism is ancient arrogance, wearing modern clothing. We are not evolving. We are regressing into the mindset of the world God erased, which means the outcome will be the same. Asterisk, asterisk 5. If we are repeating the first world, our ending will mirror theirs. Asterisk, asterisk. The world before Adam ended in silence, darkness, and water. Humanity's ending may not use water. God already promised that. But the pattern of judgment remains. When a civilization corrupts flesh, destroys morality, normalizes violence, rejects God, worships self, unites in rebellion, reaches irreversible decay, God acts. He doesn't send warnings. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't leave survivors. He erases. We like to pretend God changed, but the erased world proves he hasn't. Asterisk, asterisk 6. The most terrifying truth. We are living on someone else's ashes. Asterisk, asterisk. Humanity is not living on a blank planet. We're living on top of a buried civilization, a drowned world, a forgotten history, the remains of a species erased by God. We exist only because another world ended, and one day, Another species may stand where we stand and ask the same question. What happened to the humans who came before us? This is the cosmic cycle the Bible hints at, but does not fully reveal. But one thing is clear. We were not the beginning. We might not be the end. We are simply the present chapter in a book God has written across eternity. And if humanity fails the same test the first world failed, God will not hesitate to turn our chapter into a blank page for the next race to write on. 7. The final question, the one no human wants to confront. If a civilization existed before Adam, and God erased them, if humanity is repeating their mistakes, if we may be followed by another race, then the question that matters most is not historical, theological, or philosophical. It is personal. It is this. What are you personally contributing to the survival of humanity or to its destruction? Are you part of the arrogance, part of the corruption, part of the violence, part of the chaos, part of the rebellion? Or are you part of the tiny remnant that still believes humanity can choose differently? The first world didn't leave survivors. No remnant, no second chance, but humanity was given one. The descendants of Adam have one opportunity to prove that God did not restart creation in vain. You live in a world heading toward the same cliff as the civilization that came before us. The difference is, you know the pattern. They didn't. The first world walked blindly into destruction. We are sprinting into it with our eyes wide open. And that means our judgment will be heavier than theirs ever was. Before humanity existed, there was another world, another race, another civilization. God erased them and began again. Today, the world looks frighteningly familiar. If we are not the first world God destroyed, then we will not be the last, because the story of creation is not the story of the beginning. It is the story of what God does when a world forgets who created it. And if humanity forgets again, we will end exactly where the first world ended, in silence, in darkness, and in the ruins of a story God chose to erase. The question is not whether another world came before us. The question is, will another world come after us?